Mixed Minus Podcast. Matt McQueenie here with Joshua Jacobs, who I'm meeting for the first time today in person. He came all the way out. It's kind of fascinating how we met. You're kind of like a podcast fixer, right?
You mean by podcast fixer what I just
behind the scenes, an operative?
I don't know about that.
Podperative.
I just think I'm very adamant. I just really enjoy listening to podcasts a lot. I have, a big podcast feed I listen to, and it's just, I'm someone that I feel like I recommend a lot of podcasts to people, and oftentimes they listen to it.
And this is your first one?
Yeah, it's my first one being on, but yeah, so.
Is it weird to be in one that you've heard?
Yeah, it's really weird.
Be in your ears right now, listening to it.
Yeah, yes, that is really weird. Like I can almost hear my voice in this. So it's like when I download your podcast, it's gonna be like, oh, Joshua Jacobs there, and it's like, oh,
whoa, I'm in my own ears right now. So I don't even know how many ways we can go with this. Well, first off, we should say I did the interview on Labor Day with Nuno Damasio, and this is the cool part with podcasts. And they're a little bit like the old punk scene I used to be in. There's like this weird connection to everything behind the scenes. And so I published that podcast. And the neat thing with it is, since it's a web property, it goes out to all of your own followers and then sort of all of the followers of the guests you have.
Yeah.
And that guest was interesting because he wrote about Bill Parcells, like sort of the godfather of the NFL. And you happen to be a fan of Nuno because you read the book. He said that you actually had margin notes and you sent him like notes on the book. He's really into it, man. And so you were so excited about this because you were probably waiting for this guy who seems so modest to be on a show, right? That it was like a shock to the system to see like, what the heck? He's on a show?
Yeah, absolutely. He told me that he was going to be on a podcast, and I'm like, wow, that's great. And I went into my iTunes network and I put his name in, and I'm like, oh, you're on Matthew McQueenie's podcast. He's like, what? You know him?
I know how to Google him or search him.
Well, I mean, it kind of speaks to like how only 20% of Americans listen to podcasts and stuff. So it's like if you're not in that world, you don't really know how that works. It's like, how do you find these things?
Yeah, people don't know how to find it. And the funny thing is, even with all that said, you being such a podcast aficionado, you listen to them on like an iPod.
Yeah.
So you have to really love what you're listening to because you have to go into the iTunes app on a computer, download the podcast you want, and then transfer it to a device.
Yeah, no, I do. Absolutely. So it's like, I mean, in a way, it's not always a good thing. There's some days, I don't want to open up my laptop, and I'm like, but I need to get the podcast.
You got to move over to the Android one. You got to get the Pocket Cast. It's really good. It's going to be like such a shock to your system to see them come onto your phone when you're away from a computer.
Yeah, maybe I should. My wife says I should just get on iPhone and get rid of the Droid, though.
Well, that's true. But the interesting thing is you were so into it that you then, I think, contacted me somehow. And then all of a sudden, like worlds connect in a strange way. And here you are sitting here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what did I do? He told me about it, and then I saw it, and then I saw it on Twitter, and then like, I liked the tweets you sent out regarding it. And of course, he liked it, although he's behind Bill Parcells' book, I think, so he's not officially on it. And then you liked it as well. And then I looked you up on Facebook, and I just sent you a friend request on Facebook. Yeah,
it's so crazy how that works. So now everyone knows how we know each other. Uh-huh. I'm meeting you for the first time, as the audience is. I think we have to talk about the campaign that just happened because it just happened and it's like on everybody's mind. And myself, I did a podcast last night, so I sort of got some thoughts out there, even though my guest, Dan Pellick, doesn't like to talk a lot about politics. He's a lawyer kind of guy. So he was allowing me to say stuff, but I started out being very, very just almost depressed, like where I woke up the next morning almost on only 3 hours of sleep because I just kept going, this isn't really happening. It's going to turn somewhere. And it didn't turn. And it was sort of like it's announced it's happening. I couldn't see his speech. I couldn't do it. And I woke up feeling as if someone had died. Maybe that someone was America. But then you come out of it because even when someone passes away, there's many stages of how you deal with it. You have something that you do that makes you forget about it for a minute. But sometimes that's worse because then when you get done with doing that thing, everything floods back like crazy. And I've had all these moments over the last 2 days because the election happened 2 days ago. So actually, no, it's only 1.5 days, really 1 day, but it feels like 10 weeks. But I just have these moments where I go, oh my God, Donald Trump is our president. And I'm dealing with this in many psychological ways because I'm telling myself, wait a second, am I just so angry because I'm partisan? Am I so angry because he said what he said on the campaign? But then I would not hold it. I mean, no one would say the things he said, but people say things that are gotchas, and people go, oh my God, they said this before Trump. Like it ends up being it pales in comparison, but you're kind of sitting there like, all right, I have to move forward now. We're not changing this. No matter all these protests that are happening, we're not changing this. He's there. And maybe he's not who he was because he was a Democrat 4 years ago. So I'm kind of talking through the way my brain is working through this thing. I don't know where to stand. I don't know what to do. My initial inclination was to walk into a Democratic local, whatever they are. What are they? Democratic group or whatever, local Sussex County Democrats or something. And then I'm like, oh, but that feels so political. I don't know what to do. So I just keep hoping that he's not who he was. And that he's going to be somewhat down the line, or he's so all over the place that he ends up in the middle somehow. I don't know how to process this.
There was, my Facebook feed has a lot of diversity of opinions. And there's one gentleman who I like to follow closely, and he's an older African American gentleman who was a pastor in a church and a high school history teacher in the city. And his attitude kind of was, everyone says that fear won, but if you ask me, I think Hillary Clinton did fear mongering as well.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the comment, but I said, okay, what's next? And he said, well, I think the thing is, we have to do a better job of holding those in power accountable. And it's almost like all of Obama's supporters didn't do a good job of holding him accountable because they were so quick to defend him against all the people that were against him.
Right. Yeah, you end up being with your person.
Yeah.
And is it to the detriment? And the other piece is often politicians don't honestly do enough stuff to constantly be criticized in some ways. Like things come out and you go, oh, I'm against that. I'm against that. But the angling, I think that's what you stand up for, is when it's an obvious thing where they're angling for a negative. Like I said in the one podcast a few times ago, I felt like over the last 8 years, Republicans ended up being short sellers on America. They were shorting America. They were shorting America as a stock. And liberals were long on the stock. We're looking at the long view. We're betting on it succeeding. And then I'm thinking, what I'm seeing over Facebook the last couple of days, what I'm reading from people I know who are maybe a little loud, it almost sounds exactly like what I read 8 years ago from people I know who are right-wing when Obama won. And so I don't know what's constructive. I have a very hard time deep down saying this is my president, who we have now. Let's just get behind everything he does, because I think I don't like him. but do I not like it? I don't know. He's also a Rorschach test. He's not open, but we don't know what he is. We don't know what his policies are. We don't know what his plans are. He sort of just ended up being like an artist who's on hit radio, where they have little pieces of parts that hook into people's brains that they know are going to be catchy. And then you put like Justin Bieber with Skrillex, and you just know these mixes are going to work. But like if you push the song a little bit, it falls over. But like if you stay within that narrow alleyway, it works. And then it's over before you need to think any more about it. And I sort of think Trump I think he kind of did that. He found the most basic, lowest common denominator. And I read that he speaks at a 4th grade reading level. Not that that's what he always speaks like. I'm sure behind scenes he's a little different. Although maybe the Billy Bush thing doesn't. I don't know. A 4th grader probably wouldn't say those things. But he was speaking to an audience a lot in the middle of the country, even though we got a lot of different groups. But he was speaking to an audience who was maybe looking for a real simple message. And he's going to, and the worst part is if he ends up being a good president, for instance, for you or I, that might mean he's not a good president to the people who truly rode his wave into office.
My hopes aren't that high. I think who was it? We talk about different podcasts. Was it Molly Ball who was interviewed by Ezra Klein, and she said that politics is really a politics of identity. Like, we like to think it's about issues, but it's a politics of identity. So it's really, who do you identify with? So even if Trump does some good things well, people that don't like him aren't going to identify with that. Like I was baffled from the get-go, and it's almost like the Democratic Party, we progressives, we did a poor job at just kind of shaming Trump instead of having a positive message. I mean, that's one thing. But I always kept on saying he has no policy positions. Like, what's going on with that? But it's so easy to go into the whole, oh, got him on that. I got him on that. Like, as opposed to really like talking about policy issues. Like, I was listening to part of Ezra Klein's podcast as well with Vox, The Weeds. I was listening to what is the difference in policy positions between Trump and Clinton. And one of the biggest policy positions that Clinton had that she's trying to advocate, I don't know if it would have gotten through Congress, was that she wanted to do something about like free pre-K for kids. Like, the American system is designed where it's still designed where families can only really exist in properly taking care of their kids in a single parent household working. And we're in a country now where both parents have to work to still keep up our quality of life.
To pay to have other people watch their kids.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, so that right there, like, so I have a 2-year-old daughter, you have a 2-year-old son. We're of the same, we grew up the same generation. I was born in 1981. You were born in 82?
82.
So we essentially grew up together in the suburbs of New York City.
Yeah.
So we see things. So just us, or if you're planning on being a parent, and you voted for Trump, I mean, that's just foolish, because everyone votes their self-interest.
Yeah.
And everyone got caught up in the identity politics. But the bottom line is people still vote their self-interest. And, to people in Michigan and Ohio and Wisconsin losing those factory jobs, they're like, hey, my self-interest say, you know what, I'm going to take a chance on this guy because I lost my job. I'm pissed, and Hillary's not speaking to what matters to me.
At all, yeah. And maybe if she's being honest, she can't speak to them. Like, I've been having trouble figuring out what is the line that ties these two parts of America together anymore. And people can say, oh, it's being American and all this. But like, we're talking here 8 years ago when I saw the people saying what they said, this is not my president. We got to take our country back. Liberals are saying the same thing now. And the terrible thing is, it puts you in a position, and now I see how a lot of my right-wingers friends felt. They weren't necessarily staying my friends. That was always a shock to me. When you were like really cool with kids, like in high school, and they were real normal, everything, and then over like the next 10 years, something happened, and they like go in a direction where you go, whoa, what the hell just happened here? What? We were in the same place. We did all the same things. Who did you get in with? Where is this coming from? And you're just like, you can believe that, but like, your life situation, this is wacky. This doesn't make any sense. But I wonder what is the through line, and how this won't stop. Like, who's going to be the person who comes in and ties the two parts together? And my fear is that Donald Trump does what America really hasn't done before, but other countries do, especially dictatorial countries. The president finds a way, and in America, do not call it welfare because they won't take it then, but they will find a way where he can pay them. Maybe he'll use the forward-thinking term universal basic income. But if you find a way to sort of pay that group off, they might vote you in again, and our kids might be 10 before he's finished. I mean, it seems the most obvious, easiest thing to do. Don't call it welfare. Keep your government hands off my universal basic income. But that's my worry. And that is this guy doesn't have a huge attention span. I'm fascinated, and he'll be the guy who will do a reality show. I'm fascinated to see Donald Trump be a president. I mean, President Obama and most presidents are reading briefing papers into the night. They're taking meetings at 6:30, 7 in the morning until 7 at night, 8 at night, and then there's always a crisis. So you're walking in your pajamas back into the briefing room. Donald Trump's going home to New York, I think, most days. He's not going to live in that terrible White House. He might live in the Trump building that was just built across the street. Like, that's going to be weird, too. Like, there's a part of this I don't like, that it feels like he's upending the stature of the White House. But maybe I'm too elite. I don't know.
There's a lot to chew on right there. For one thing, I didn't know that there was a Trump Tower across the street from.
Well, the one he just built, it wasn't it was a hotel, maybe something like that, right down the street, right down the street, and they just cut the ribbon on it when he was campaigning.
You know, there's a lot that you packed in there, though. But, well, for one thing, your whole idea of like having like a universal income, that's not. I mean, even though I guess to some, if they never heard it, it's a novel thought. But you know, I've heard that before. Like, you know, people need basic coverage, and it's kind of like a Nixon goes to China thing. Like, only a Republican could pass that. But you know, if you ask someone like former Speaker John Boehner, he's like, Trump isn't even really Republican.
No.
But the larger point, though, and this is what a lot of people tell me, is not that Trump they're scared of. They're scared of Trump's supporters, like what they're doing, because those supporters, it kind of gives them license to be bigger bullies, to say, hey, Muslims get out. Oh, Mexicans get out. And
to make America brash.
Yeah.
Instead of open and just, and I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing this open ugliness that you're right. That's the point that we cannot break. We can't have this open ugliness. And he was playing a game, and they think he was being real. When he speaks into a microphone doing that, we all know he's speaking, and he knows he's on TV. He knows he's doing it, and somehow he got through. But the people who are doing it when a camera's not on them, that to me tells me that is. All these people are like, he speaks how we think. And it's like, yeah, you're supposed to think that. You're not supposed to actually say that. At best, you're supposed to think. And I'm not saying you actually should think that way. But yeah, everybody, there's like a million thoughts that go through our heads during the day, and maybe 10% of those make it out. But these groups that he's unleashed, as you said, he gave license to, I don't know how you put that back in a bag, because that might be the thing they think they won, when he doesn't actually deliver. What is he going to deliver tangible to them if we're not talking about a universal? And maybe it's not universal. Maybe it's like, well, I'm just going to make sure these people get it. It'll be like parochial basic income. But what are they going to get? What can he give them? There's nothing to give. Business now starts from people. It starts from deciding, I'm going to make a company that hires 3 people. We'll be a little web company. We'll be a little manufacturing deal, some kind of software company, some kind of brain power company, consultant. That is companies now. It's not factory towns with 5,000 jobs in one company. And that is what all those towns are seemingly set up for. But this is America. We have the platform where you can start your own thing. Everyone's got mobile phones. Everybody's got a pretty good internet connection at the least. I don't know what's going to be given to them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
Well, I thought the whole thinking is that people want Republicans because they want government out of their way. They don't want government intervention, Like, I mean, like what you're saying is like these people voted for Trump thinking they were expecting something.
I think so.
If that was the case, then
well, don't you think they're expecting? You said, like, you're right. We vote in our self-interest. Self-interest is usually, I mean, we read a lot, we consume a lot. So it gives you a certain context of things where you know not to say certain things, because there's actually a million things going on behind the scenes on the one thing that you're going to make an opinion about, that it almost stops you from making an opinion, because you know how much is going into the sausage being made in whatever that entity is. This is a simplistic view, and in a simplistic view spot, and I'm speaking down, it sounds like, but if you're voting in your self-interest in those places, I know I heard Michael Moore say they just wanted to throw a Molotov cocktail into the thing. But at the end of the day, anybody's got to realize that is not productive. They want something from him. He said, I'm speaking for you. And I think cutting down trade deals, getting rid of immigrants, building a wall, unless he's hiring everyone in middle America to actually build that wall. And a lot of people don't want to build a wall either. That's a hard, like, physically to build a wall, but that's not the work they want to do. What is he going to give to them? I think he's going to give more to you and I in the areas where we live, because you can't just give something like this to how many people voted? It was 100 million, something like that. What is he going to give to what ends up being a pretty disparate group of people? I know we go, it's the middle of the country. Michigan's different from Alabama, though. I mean, there's a lot of connections, but I don't know what he's going to give to them.
Well, I mean, it's like everybody had different interests. Some people just didn't want to see a woman president. Some people said, hey, we don't want Democrats anymore. I mean,
I think that was a lot, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. It's the last time you had a party stay in the White House for 3 terms was George H.W. Bush essentially served Ronald Reagan's 3rd term. And then he got voted out. Bill Clinton came in. So I mean, I don't know if that's really the question give to them. I think Michael Moore touches a good point. Like, people just kind of wanted to see the system blow up, and they're happy about it. But one thing that's incredibly scary and troubling is Business Insider just came out with an article saying how the stock market went way up in regards to private prisons. Prison stocks went way up. Yeah. That's terrifying. Everything that happened. Did you see that? I saw documentary? There's a documentary on Netflix, the 13th. Yeah. It's a powerful documentary. Yeah. So powerful. Newt Gingrich was even in there. So he was talking about how this is run amok the prison industrial complex. The number of of people of color, young men that are getting thrown in prison. I mean, just like for minor drug offenses, having a bag of a dime bag of pot or something. Yeah. It's ridiculous. So that's really terrifying right there. So that's where you see, like, I really think it's really important for people to mobilize now, to get organized, to get involved in their politics, their town committees, to protest. I'm hearing, seeing things on Facebook. Well, why are you protesting now? You could have voted him out. Okay, no, people are protesting now. It's important they protest now, because protests can be bigger, because this is where you're going to push. You got to push the agenda. It's the will of the people.
Right. They have to hear. They have to see and hear you pushing certain things. Mm-hmm. They have to know it's not okay. Yeah. Mike Pence to be like, we're going to be an anti-gay. Yeah,
that's terrifying too. People don't even know this though. They don't realize, because Mike Pence was the underticket though. But the governor of Indiana tried to pass gay conversion therapy. Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like that's going so far backwards.
Right.
It's like,
I've been thinking it would be interesting if there was a way to mobilize everybody who voted on the one side to like Indianapolis. So you have everybody, like when we saw that Chicago Cubs parade, and it was like the 13th largest assemblage of people in one place in human history, or some crazy thing like that. What about if, I forget if it's 60, I don't know if it's 60 or 100 million or whatever it was. I guess 55% of the population voted. So I think we're 300 million people. So it's probably 60 million or something. Imagine 60 million people just going to like Indianapolis.
To just protest Mike Pence about
well, no, that? just to protest. Just to protest about what happened. But you got to find a central spot. And that's where the vice president's from. It's kind of central to the country. And then you just see 60 million people in like a concentric circle.
That would be
straight out of that's the thing.
That would be insane. I don't think you've ever seen anything organized quite like that. How many people were at the Cubs World Series?
I think it was 7 million, right?
7 million.
And that was a lot.
That's a ton right there for a big city like Chicago. That's like half of New York City right there.
But this is the issue with protests to me, is when you do it in all these little cities, you look small. You look like small business, And I don't know that. Look, I'm not saying what I'm saying is not insane, but when you see the amount that can assemble in one city, it's large. But then when you see it here, you see it this city, it's so disparate. You're not going to be that upset by it if you're Trump. I don't think Trump's upset by any of this, to be honest. I think he's just like, oh my God. I'd love to be in his brain for half a second. In the first time he sits down, you almost see that shot from behind the head where like the camera's coming around and he's looking around the table at all the people who are there, the generals and all this, and he's sitting there going, yeah, I'm supposed to be here. That's the cockiness. Ugh.
He didn't think he was going to win. He spent more time on his concession speech than on his victory speech. And New York Times came out saying, for the longest, he thought he was going to lose 254 electoral votes. Like, he was ready to give a gracious concession speech from what I heard, because after everything he's leading up to it, if I don't win, I'm going to protest this and everything. And that was just a way for him to get attention. But he's probably thinking, WTF, I'm the president-elect. Like,
that's a hard job. And you got to care. You can't outsource that job. And I don't know, from everything I've read about him. And look, maybe everything I've read about him had an agenda behind it to prove he wasn't fit. From the New Yorker article with the guy who wrote his book with him, The Art of the Deal, saying, oh, this guy's crazy. I mean, how much crazy stuff came out about this guy, or he said himself, and he's the president. And maybe it's just the new template of campaigning. Maybe we're going to see, maybe he's the progenitor of this kind of campaigning where people just are more everyman, say whatever. But he was the first guy who kind of did this in my lifetime, or it wasn't, it wasn't hoity-toity, this is how we speak and this is what we do and I'm here for America. He was just like, yeah, he's making it up in his head as he speaks. The thing I've had trouble in my own psychology, though, I just can't come around to the fact 4 years ago, if Mitt Romney won, would I be just as depressed? Now, granted, I don't mean just as depressed now knowing that Donald Trump happened and then I could counterfactual back. I think, though, it's possible I would have been just as down if Mitt Romney beat Barack Obama after one term as I feel now. And that to me makes me feel partisan. Maybe it's okay to be a little partisan. You want one side over the other. But I really thought about that. And look, that Mitt documentary on Netflix, it made he actually would probably be a very good president. He actually probably would, from a business point of view, from just caring. And he was a very good family man. As to be honest, Donald Trump almost sort of looks like one. I mean, he seems to have, his kids are a little nuts, but we're all not. I mean, if we were all in that position, we would crack a little bit, I think. We might look a little silly. I'm not killing lions in Africa, but I just wonder, I think I would have felt pretty depressed there too. However it swings, I would feel depressed. I don't understand these people who just go, this is our president, I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, that's a lot to chew on right there too. I would say that, and this goes into, I guess, partially identity politics, but also just the historical precedent. I mean, we had an opportunity to have our first female president-elect, and that was totally underrated. But President Obama winning re-election, to me, and I'd imagine to you as well, was super important because it validated him, because people wanted to say the first time he was elected, oh, it was fluky, the financial crisis, John McCain picked Sarah Palin, which is crazy because I feel like Donald Trump is like the male Sarah Palin, and that shows the misogyny of this country, because if Donald Trump was a woman saying that, people would be like, oh my God, Sarah Palin, I can't vote for her.
Right.
But you had over 50% of women voting for Donald Trump. Insane.
Yeah.
But there was another point you made. So about Obama losing. The other thing about it, though, is you got to look at it like this, too. Republicans control Congress. They don't know how to govern anymore. No. That's what's fascinating, but in a scary way, because they've been obstructionists against Obama for 8 years. Shorting. I remember I listened to the podcast with your dad, how your dad just came back from the Republican National Convention. I love the analogy he made about how Democrats are ones that like to push on the gas pedal too hard driving, while Republicans are quick to hit the brakes. They want to stop and go at it. And, it's like each of the individual players, they're well-meaning. They believe in public service. And I thought that was good. Like, you kind of cut right through it. Like people usually go in because they want to make a difference there. But this is an advantage too. And it's also just a governing philosophy today. And unfortunately, it is a criticism against the Republican Party. I'm going to say it. The Republican Party is totally dysfunctional. Everyone thought it would go to implode and blow up. And it's like, oh my God, they threw the longest Hail Mary with Donald Trump, and somehow the guy caught the ball. Because Republicans don't want to govern. Like, Democrats have visions of governing. Like, Democrats are inevitably going to want to find areas to compromise because they want to get stuff done. They want stuff to work. Where Republicans are like, oh, we can't raise the debt ceiling. Let's drown the debt in bathwater. That's how small I want the debt to be. And that's not a governing principle. We're electing people to work on our government that want to destroy government. That is insane. That's like a country that wants to kill itself.
Right. How did they get this level of control, though? Like, when you think about president, Congress, Senate, House, I mean, that's the same thing. Supreme Court will be now, 30 out of 50 state houses. Like, how did this happen? And I know gerrymandering, and I know the primary systems and all that can play into it. But this, to me, makes me wonder if, Democrats are the ones who want to get things done, that maybe Democrats also don't really want to go into government because they think they're kind of above this mess. Whereas Republicans almost see it as an opportunity to get power and get in. Like, are enough of us
So you're saying on
being political.
At the individual level, like you're saying people that have more of a, people that are more, like identify more with the Republican Party, whether they're registered or not. I mean, because they say even independents, you inevitably identify more with one party or another. Even if you say you're an independent, you might lean more Republican, Democrat. You're saying people that are, whether independents or what have you, they identify more with the Republican Party, they're more likely to want to go into office because they want the power. They're power hungry. Yeah,
it's a place you can go to get some power. And I think maybe a lot of liberals or Democrats don't want to be in government. And that's unbelievably dangerous if that hypothesis is true. Like, I think you have some history with politics, right?
Yeah, I was a political science major in college. I've worked on a few campaigns.
Yes.
Graduated college 2004 and did some issue campaigns, political campaigns. So yeah, I have been around. I mean, there's people that are in campaigns every year. So I'm definitely not at their level, but I've seen like the inner workings, the mechanics of political campaigns.
But like me, I mean, when that Trump thing happened, I never had the feeling where I'm like, I want to go into politics. I never did. And my mom just won her freeholder campaign.
Congratulations to your mother.
She won that in Bergen County. And I was shocked that my mom jumped into this. She had a good history of being a media person, of being a TV host, of being a newspaper editor and a syndicated newspaper columnist, all this. But politics is like a totally different game. And over the last couple of years, she's almost been risen up to serve. So it starts with like the town council in Mawa. She runs for that. She's a leading vote getter in the whole thing. And she's doing that. And then all of a sudden, someone's like, oh, that person looks pretty good for certain demographics and for the content of her character. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, did you ever think about, there's one Christmas party or something. Someone says, did you ever think about running for freeholder? And no, she lets herself slide up into that. And she campaigns like crazy for months, 6 months. And all of a sudden she was the leading vote getter of that the other night. And I'm watching, and like, we're such like not a political family, even though my dad was in politics and everything, he never brought his work home. So I never knew what my dad really did because he left it all at the door.
Sure.
But we're such like naive about that. I wasn't even at her victory thing. It's held in a hotel, and she's very.
What were you? You were mourning the results coming in for the presidential election.
Well,
was that what was happening?
I was going to be home, but she's very modest about. It's always what she can do for us. It's never what we can do for her, and so she's never going to ask us or say, "Hey, why don't you put on your schedule to come to this?" So I found out about it that morning. Even though someone who's in politics should understand, there's going to be some kind of thing at a hotel where there's all these people cheering, and my brother was able to go. And I was watching it on Facebook Live, and I'm like, oh my God, there are like people standing up and chanting, and she's giving a speech. It was like surreal. I'm like, is this like the show This Is Us? Like, what the hell's going on here? And so I remember even telling her Tuesday morning, it's amazing you did this. I don't know how you did this. It's so against my being to imagine myself being pulled from event to event to event, to shaking hands, to speaking, to be exhausted, but still to push through and have a smile. It's just not me. It's not me. I like to be a little more in the background. But the minute that Trump thing happened, I felt a resolve. And who knows, now I'm on record saying it, but who knows if it even follows through. But I felt so strongly about that morning, walking into an office and being like, what do I do here? Because I read a lot. I know a lot about politics just from being secondhand and reading about it, and I'm not going into it. How many of those people are us? How many people out there are doing the same thing, just standing on the sidelines, not because of being a bad person, but just you have a life, you have a job, you have other things you want to do. But maybe this is the problem. I mean, we're a liberal country. I don't care what people want to say about that. We are. We're a liberal, open country, and the opposite party is in charge of everything. Yeah. And I think that's a major problem. And maybe you have to kind of, the good people, and I'm saying we're good people. We're really good people, as Donald Trump would say. People love us.
I don't think you want to quote Donald Trump in this reference.
Right. But maybe that's an issue. Obama was a shooting star. I mean, he is, like, I compared him. Michael Jordan, he's LeBron, and people could go, oh, you're partisan. No. He is a bona fide star, person, thinker, whatever. He can make mistakes. Everyone can make mistakes. These athletes can make plenty of them with all these years they play. If you're in the game long enough, you're going to make a lot. But he is a star. And I know people can say it happens once a lifetime, but Donald Trump was a star on the other end. It's not the star we wanted. He's brash, he's profane, he's obscene, but he was a star to that group. He was their Obama, and that disgusts me to say that. He really was. He ended up being their outsider who was going to speak to them in a language they like. And why is there not another Barack Obama? All the Democrats, I watched that Ringer. I thought that was amazing. That was the Ringer political stuff, the Keeping It 1600 is the far and away the star of Bill Simmons' post ESPN endeavors. All the things he made, that little decision to bring an old Holy Cross fellow alum to run this little podcast, that was a must listen to thing. And on that night, it was the only group, when I was watching on my little phone on Periscope, it was the only group speaking to me with the depression that they were speaking it to you. The next day I listened to they had to leave. They couldn't keep doing it. They were so sick to their stomachs that night. The next morning they did it, and it was hilarious because I listened and they're like, you know what? The thing you do is you walk into your local Democratic building. And I was like, that's totally right. I couldn't find anyone to do it. But why aren't there not more people behind Barack Obama? Like, in line. People can say Cory Booker, they can say this, but shooting stars should be around. Sometimes a guy comes off the bench and then turns into an all-star. You don't know how it happened, but you had him on your roster. Like look at Golden State. All those players, anyone could have drafted them. I mean, other than Kevin Durant, he was a completely known quantity that he would be great. But there are other main players, second round, later down towards 10 or towards 15, towards 20.
You realize that Minnesota screwed it up for the Knicks because Minnesota picked 2 point guards in a row that draft. Right. And if they didn't, then the Knicks probably would have gotten Steph Curry.
That's right. Yeah. But
that's just a side note there.
But you get the right people and then hope they are shooting stars and work it out. And I think that's an issue. Because the reason I brought the political podcast, there's this idea of what do we do to redo this? No, there's nothing to redo. We are 50-50. And just as in sports, a star puts you over the top. Obama put them over the top. The infrastructure of the Obama campaign thought it was the data and it was the infrastructure, when in reality it was the star merged atop that system. Like the Chicago Cubs. You have great players, but they're merged atop this data system. They put that same data system with Hillary Clinton on top of it, and end up being like the Brooklyn Nets of a couple of years ago. You get all these older players, you look at past performance, you throw them on there, and it didn't work out. They had 44 wins, and they blew up everything. Charisma, singular identity, politics even matters at those really high levels.
Well, you got to look at what coalition are you patching together? Because the big wonder is amongst my friends, like from the start, my friends, my family, we were actually Bernie supporters.
Yeah.
How would have Bernie matched up against Trump?
Right.
I tend to think he actually would have won. I mean, Obama had an amazing coalition. What Obama attracted, there were the political podcast I listened to said that actually Bernie attracted a lot of Obama supporters, but Bernie's a lot more liberal than Obama actually, Democratic Socialist. But the thing is, what happened is that people identify with Obama and Bernie the same way because Obama's kind of this outsider. Even though on paper, Obama and Hillary's positions are similar, but Hillary's such a creature of Washington, people didn't like that. So that's why Obama attracts those outsiders, but he's playing that inside game. And Obama attracted a unique coalition that obviously can't be replicated. And I think Bernie would have attracted a unique coalition as well. I think rural white voters actually would have voted for Bernie instead of Trump because they said, we want somebody as an outsider. It's not like give me something. Because if they said give me something, then they should have registered as Democrats and voted in Democratic primaries for Bernie, because Bernie would have been the one that would have better served them ultimately. I mean, Clinton, I'm heartbroken. I really am. I'm not saying that. Like, Bernie would have been great. Yeah. I understand the whole argument between Bernie and Hillary. The tremendous irony here is that the Republican Party was more democratic in their process about who they nominated because they allowed Trump to rise up. Yeah. With the Democratic Party, they stayed very much within the establishment.
They stage managed it a little.
They did. A lot of people argue saying, how dare they fix it and stuff. And I mean, you could argue about that, and I could see that point and stuff, but it's really about your party infrastructure. I don't know what happened to the Republican Party. I identify as a Democrat, so I understand the Democratic Party better. But the Republican Party, they always used to be the ones that would kind of almost anoint the next person. Like when Clinton was in office, when Bush got elected to Texas governor in '94, and he beat a very popular Democratic governor in Texas, and Texas was a very Democratic state then. Everyone was saying, oh, wow, he could save the Republican Party, and they were coalescing behind him. And then he did, and then he won, and you haven't seen that again. I mean, ever since then, it's been a free-for-all in the Republican Party.
And they have so much power.
It's
crazy
it's
that
so
they're
weird.
not, that there isn't somebody. It's like they're just, you're like, I was thinking about what you said earlier too. The obstruction aspect, they have to dust off. This is like Juwan Howard on the Heat having to be brought into a finals game at the end. And you're like, Juwan Howard's still around?
You realize Juwan Howard still is more famous for being a member of the Fab Five basketball team than being an NBA player.
And made like $160 million in the NBA.
That's incredible.
It's incredible. And I think he's like an assistant coach now, but he was on that bench forever. They are so out of touch with legislating that you're right, can they? This is a team that was built to stop. It was a defensive team. Now they got the field, and what are they going to do? And there are still so many dynamics of all the people who are so worried that, we've allowed this one crazy party to have control of the till of everything. Yeah, but they're all individuals who all have their own picadillos and their own regions and their own constituencies and their own biases and perspectives. And I know that you can whip up support in, Frank Underwood, like I was saying on House of Cards before he becomes the president. Sorry, I just wrecked it for you. But he starts as a majority whip. That doesn't work anymore. You can't whip all these votes. Boehner was finished. There's wings that pop up. There's like the control that's there isn't as good as it seems, because when you have one side control and you don't have another side to bounce off of, you don't even know what you're for anymore. Sometimes you're afraid to go out there and you're like, why is this legislation so easy to make? And is it because at this point now we'll say, is it because the Democratic Party is laying back going, this is going to be really bad. Just let them do this.
Well, I mean, it talks another thing. It's like a lot of people, I remember John Painter was saying too, he's like, well, Trump's not even really Republican. I'm not going to vote for him. But, if I was a Republican operative rallying people, I'd be like, Trump still has, electing Trump will allow you to have control of the Supreme Court. We have a vacancy in the Supreme Court. There's only 8 sitting justices. This is like unprecedented. Yeah. They're like, well, elections have consequences. No, the president of the United States is allowed to nominate someone to the Supreme Court. Yeah. And Merrick Garland is floundering there. That's like never happened. No. Never, ever happened. And now you have Trump who was allowed it to happen. And that's the whole reason why. That's where you have a lot of these voters that still identify with these moral issues. They're like, yes, we still get to pick who we want on the Supreme Court. Everything else could be damned, but we get the Supreme Court we want. And that's terrifying. Yeah. And some people say Obama made a strategic mistake there. He should have picked a more liberal potential Supreme Court justice, because it would have rallied more the liberal base. I mean, it's so easy to play armchair politics now. What could have been done?
Well, he probably thought better? That wasn't going to happen. What's happened?
That Garland would have gone.
And he was like, this is a good guy. Like, this is a guy that anybody could rally around. And then it's like, no, they're at that level right now.
No one. This is the other scary thing. The Democratic Party has no backup plan. Like, who is next for them? They don't have a leader of the party now. They did not see this coming. Everything you heard. I love the Keeping It 1600 podcast. The Holy Cross alum John Favreau, who also we have to mention was Obama's chief speechwriter. I love that podcast, and they always would say, if Clinton loses, even like that moments when they were a little bit scared right after the whole email scandal came out again, and then things seemed to normalize.
They were way too cocky.
That's what I'm saying.
Hilarious, and rightfully, because I think a lot of us thought this. You don't sometimes see a guerrilla movement because it's a guerrilla movement. You don't see it coalescing until that voting day. Mm-hmm. You know how hard it is too for a certain segment of the population to come out and say, hashtag I'm with Trump.
Yeah, no, it's
so like, they didn't want it. It's like, we don't know what goes on behind people's bedroom doors. We don't know what goes on behind that ballot box. And when you're voting for somebody who is so highly controversial, you're keeping that to the vest.
No, you know what? I had a colleague. You remind me of something, because I had a colleague at work, And he would say to me, he's like, I think Trump is either going to be if he gets elected, he'll either be a good president or a tremendous flop. And I would talk to him, and he'd always be like, and this is, I hear other people saying, well, I don't like either of them. But then you hear them say subtle things about, well, Trump could turn out good. And then I'd have people like colleagues coming around my desk because I really identified strong with Hillary. And they'd talk about it. And he'd always like go silent. He wouldn't say anything. Really quiet. I would just be someone probably talking to him and like hearing what he's thinking. But the thing is, he was voting in a totally different election than what other people were voting in. I think I was sharing with you before the podcast, like, there was almost 2 elections in one. My friend was saying this. One election was you have the Wall Street candidate in Hillary, you have the Main Street candidate in Trump. But a whole nother election was happening where you had the social justice warrior in Hillary. She wanted to keep up Obamacare. She was gonna keep up Dodd-Frank. She was gonna keep LGBTQ rights. Keep them there for us. She was gonna help put forward the progressive agenda, being all inclusive. And then you had the guy backed by the KKK. Oh my God.
Well, and I just keep wondering, because my mind is constantly moving on this thing every time it comes back around to it when I forget. Is he going to be able to, for instance, do they take the chance to dismantle like turkey vultures to Obamacare? Do they really want to do that?
Or what about NATO? What are they going to do with NATO? These Baltic states are panicking right there. It's so weird because each election, like 2008 was definitely a big change election. Like we'll go back there because whatever. The Bush-Gore years going from there, 2000 was like people didn't know what to think. Okay, we had a popular incumbent who was mired by scandals because of a blowjob. And then you had Gore who seemed kind of bland. And then you had Bush who's compassion and conservatism. And that freaking election, oh my God, 2000 Florida there is a mess. Makes everybody on edge. 2004 was all about the Iraq War. Okay, we voted Bush back in. Even though some people say that there were some voting irregularities in Ohio, it wasn't quite as blatant, as oppressive as in Florida. So people gave a pass. Okay, he won before. We'll let him win again. Yeah. And the liberals are very upset. Democrats are upset, but it didn't seem like it was quite like this. And then Hurricane Katrina happened, and that was the beginning of the end of Bush. Right. And then Obama, emerged, and he took the mantle from Hillary. It was a change election. It was all the stuff happening, the whole financial crisis. And a lot of breaks had to go his way because maybe McCain would have won if the financial crisis didn't happen. If Sarah Palin wasn't nominated and people realized she was such an idiot. And then 2012, it was like, there was all these, Occupy Wall Street movement. Like what happened with Obama, though, a big reason why he won re-election was because Romney looked like Richie Rich on the whole, At
the wrong time.
Yeah, that's what people looked at. And now 2016 is like another change election. Like it was a bit of a wave, but you have, like what happened here.
And can any of these guys really do too much damage atop our infrastructure, which is pretty strong? But I keep saying with Trump, he can't do this. He can't do this. He can't do this. He can't do this.
Well, how much of a
can't do this? What can he? When you're he's not rationalizing anything because he doesn't know anything about American government. He really doesn't. I mean, he'll probably pick things up. He probably has some level of business sense where he can appear, even though it doesn't look too good, but where he can appear as if he's presiding over something. But there are so many tough decisions, and probably foreign policy is going to be scary places. But my expectation, I think I've started to come around to the fact that he's going to probably default to doing less than doing more in all ways, in legislation, in foreign policy. He doesn't want to start he says it, but he doesn't want to start a war.
What Russia's a wild card? What is Putin getting involved in this? Congratulating Trump. It's like, what is going on here? There was talk about that, and that's totally an underrated story. And that's something that the Breitbart News totally doesn't acknowledge because they talk all this stuff about the email scandals with Clinton. But Putin, oh my God. What's going on with this? Everyone's saying, Clinton is a traitor, blah, 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 this and that. I think the surprising thing to me is that Breitbart News is now mainstream news media.
They're not going to like that, by the way.
Who's not going to like that?
Breitbart won't end up liking that.
They won't like that they're
because what'll happen is when you get mainstream, you get less people. It's like the opposite of what you would think would happen. Less people will watch if they think you're mainstream. Because you notice how much now that the things you believe in are in the opposition. Mm-hmm. You are locked in to the confirmation bias world now. I want to see what Bill Maher has to say on Friday night. I want to read the New York Times, Washington Post, the New Yorker. I want to read these to know what's going on in the background because they're the only ones on the other side keeping things to account. MSNBC is going to shoot up in the ratings as it does when this changes. Fox News is now the mainstream. It's going to shoot down. It's not exciting to follow the winner side. It's not. Like if the Yankees are winning championships, you don't want to watch the Yes post game. It's not interesting.
You think I mean, I'm a Knicks fan. I guess I see from the posters there what you grew up a New Jersey Nets fan. It's a cool old school Jason Kidd poster. But I grew up a Knicks fan. When the Knicks are doing well, I'm watching more of the games. When they're not,
you're watching the games. But
yes.
Are you watching the MSG post game?
I haven't done that since I was like 13.
Yeah, but like you want to see. When you want to see the post game, you want to see the media following when things go bad. Mm-hmm. You want to see what the guy says in the post game press conference when he did something wrong, when the coach has to be called to account for a bad play that he might have called, and to see him have to squirm through the answer and be angry at the reporter and all this. Nobody watches post games when things are going well. Sure, they watch the game, but the media is sort of the post game of this stuff. They're gonna do really well with a lot of these. So, but now I've taken for granted living happily with quote unquote my ethical side in control of government. You live a different way. 8 years is a long time. When you have faith, it's like a security system. When you have faith that the things you believe in are in place at the top of the country, you don't think about much. Sure, you read up on it and you follow everything that's happening, but mostly you're just like, oh no, I feel good about what's happening. It's crazy now. You really take it for granted because now that this is in place, you're like anxious a lot of times about keeping track of what's going on. What are they trying to pull? What are they doing this? And I felt a tension in me, and it's only been a day, but I feel a tension about not having a security system behind me now.
I mean, that reminds me. David Remnick wrote a really great article for the New Yorker.
Was that too overboard, though?
Why was it too overboard?
No. I'm saying like, yes, this Trump thing was potentially horrible. What if he somehow ends up doing well? I don't know what well means either. That's the interesting part. I was saying that let's not forget everybody. I'm going to try my best to root for Donald Trump to do well. Mm-hmm. But well has to be aligned with things I believe.
I got you.
But let's not forget that he's being handed, I think I went a little over, but the sense is what I'm trying to say. He's being handed a 6-run lead in the bottom of the 9th to close the game. He's not being handed what President Obama was handed. Although some might say what he was handed was actually a positive for him because you can come from a lower expectation and hit things out of the park. But this whole Make America Great Again, how he won on that message when, in terms of what a president's in control of, America was pretty great in terms of economy and all this. It ended up pretty great at this point in time. So you're dangerous when you're saying Make America Great Again because it sort of is great by the things a president's in control of.
I mean, I guess it talks to the point like of the people that felt like they were left behind, like the Rust Belt states voted against Clinton and no one saw that coming. I mean, I guess you saw it coming 2 days before Clinton's campaigning in Michigan, in Detroit, the Sunday before the election. Wait, what's going on? I thought you had that in the bag. But
you know where I saw it coming?
Where?
Election day.
Well,
you didn't hear anything. You heard birds chirping all day. There was nothing coming out. There were no leaks. 2012, David Axelrod I was working out in the morning here, and David Axelrod was on MSNBC. No, we're feeling pretty good. We got this. It's like he was almost saying it like, no, we're fine. And then the host kept going, well, no, we're seeing this. We're fine. Trust me, we're fine. It was almost like, dude, don't continue wrecking yourself because we're fine. I didn't hear any of that. I didn't see anything hitting my feeds. And I went, this is a really close game. They don't have the leak. They don't have the confidence to leak.
Politico had an article about that, about how I guess Hillary's camp, even on the outside, they were showing confidence, and the inside they were a little bit nervous. Yeah. And the beginning of the article started about how I guess once the whole new the FBI director Comey came out saying, oh, we're opening up the case again because of Anthony Weiner and stuff. Apparently, one of Hillary's top aides, like they were on the plane, and it's like something bad just happened, and they were already feeling nervous, and the internet went off there, and it was sort of like, oh my god, like what Donna Brazile said, it feels like you're getting hit by an 8x8 truck or something. Like, so they saw something, like their internal polling was showing things a little bit shaky before, and it brings me to Nate Silver. What was he? He was like
33%.
Well, yeah, he was.
Trump could win. He was the only guy who was like, guys, let's be careful. We're going a little far. I mean, he's getting a little too much credit for being at 33% because that still is a...
I think he saw the polls and I think he thought the polls weren't that good, but I think he was almost like, he didn't want to like stoke panic and stuff.
Yeah.
Because he kind of like had his personal views. It kind of reminded me of when, with the crisis coming, Jim Cramer of Mad Money, like he didn't want to come out and say anything, even though he saw it coming.
Yeah.
And then he has to go on Jon Stewart's show and the Daily Show has to apologize for not telling people. I feel like Nate Silver played a little bit of that role in this election where he kind of
to spur the one side to make sure you get out there and continue.
Because he was saying for a while, he's like, I'm not nearly as confident about this election as I was in 2012, Obama beating Romney, because he said that was a remarkably stable election. And this was just a polling error away. And he just came out with something today, I think, saying 1 or 2 percentage points, like for one out of every 100 people that voted for Trump, if they voted for Clinton, she would have carried Florida, she would have carried Pennsylvania, she would have carried Michigan, Wisconsin, she would have had 300 something electoral votes. And now you're hearing people blaming the third party candidates and people voting for the third party candidates. And okay, there's something to that, but still, young people weren't motivated to vote for Clinton, so they voted there. They voted third party. I mean, you can blame, there's so many factors you can blame and stuff. But like what you're saying, sometimes it's like you need that star, it's like the coalition. I mean, sometimes those factors, like people, it was kind of, and there were some early stories about it, but it didn't make huge news. Like it was naive to think that you could replicate the Obama coalition and it was going to fit so nicely with Clinton's coalition.
It felt a little like how the Romney campaign felt in 2012. Like Hillary became Romney. Because a lot of them were like, no, we feel really good about this. We're feeling really good. And you just had that feeling of the flip happening against what models say.
Yes and no, but I think the difference is that all the polls were wrong this time. Last time the polls said that Obama was going to win. People just didn't believe the polls. Now it's like people took too much stock in the polls. Yeah. And like, how do you do this now? Like, you have these polls coming out, but everybody has cell phones. I let you reach people on house phones. And something like there was a lot of people in Pennsylvania, rural Pennsylvania, that voted for the first time that haven't voted in 20 plus years. Like they just came out of nowhere voting. Yeah. Like there was this huge backlash. Yeah. It makes me wonder, how would have Obama, I think Obama still would have won if he was on the ticket for the third term, but there's a backlash. It's like, I had an African-American friend and he said, he's being kind of glib. He's like, it's like the owners of this country took the country back, according to them, kind of going back to the days of like the slave owner slaves, because they got tired of having an African-American man as president. Yeah. And they're like, we're damn for sure not going to have a woman as president. I
agree with that. I think that was a case too. But I also think our country there's an interesting and tangible balancing act that happens where it's almost like, look, we just... let's make sure to get this other thing in there. And when you look over like 50 years or something, this will look like a slight correction, hopefully.
I think the biggest thing right now is people are like, oh my God, we got to wait till No, let's not wait till 2020. Yeah. You have municipal elections, city elections, like you're saying. Yeah. I think that's brilliant. I hope a lot more people are thinking that. And that should probably make me want to get more involved, like get involved in politics now. Michael Moore was always someone that said that, even if you're just running for school board. But 2018 is the big thing now. Yeah. Because it's like, I almost feel like we have to see what's going to happen the next 2 years. I think it's important to be active, to be involved, make sure that the Republican Party just doesn't run things off the rails and do whatever they want. But 2018 is big. And like what you're saying, what is with it? How the Republicans have power? Yeah, gerrymandering is a factor. And granted, the map isn't favorable for Democrats in 2 years in the House, or it's not favorable for the Senate either. But still, like you got to play with what you have, the cards you have. You got to do what you have to do, and it's really important that you don't have one party rule. Last time we had one party rule was when Obama was first elected, and some people say maybe that's when Obama should have ran the table. And he didn't. Like there's certain things he could have done, but he didn't want to be just a one-term president.
This was the year that made you feel like, right when you figured everything out in life, 2016 is going to be the year where kind of you gotta almost make sure to not throw your confidence out with the bathwater, because like as we watch sports, we watch all that, there were so many certain positions that flip, and it changes your own psychology a little bit. You think of, I'm going to bring in 2015, at the end of it. I thought as a Mets fan, I was locked in there, and I was like, they're going to win this World Series. There's no way they don't win this World Series. And it's because I'm going, San Francisco beat Kansas City the year before. The Mets have 4 Madison Bumgarners. They have a really good closer. They have a better lineup overall. Kansas City's not going to, they're just not going to be able to beat it. Mets in 5. And then when you're watching it, all of your certainty's going out the window. And again, it's another situation where, was because I'm a fan, am I overvaluing? Mm-hmm. Because I'm a follower of a certain part of the of politics am I overvaluing? And when it got there, it took it all away. And I was by the end of that series, I was almost happy it was over in 5 because I was like, I can't watch Kansas City come back on the Mets anymore. I can't do this.
I watched that. I don't watch baseball.
It's exhausting.
Yeah, baseball is so agonizing with that. Like everything is just like snapshot. It's like, oh man.
So then you get to Oklahoma City up 3-1, and you go. Like psychology messes with you. Like I need things to be right in my mind to be able to move on to something. So I'm like, all right, damn it. I was all on this train for Golden State, the 73 wins. I'm invested in them finishing this thing off to cap off the great season. They go down 3-1, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there going, man, what happened? You're trying to rationalize. You're trying to make things up of why this was this, why was this. They find a way to come all the way back absurdly, and there took magic that's needed to get there.
Yeah, Klay Thompson.
Klay Thompson.
Yeah, Klay Thompson played tremendous.
You needed magic,
and now look at him. He's playing with Durant, and he's the marginalized player.
Exactly. You get to the next series, they're up 3-1. Draymond Green kicks LeBron. He's out for Game 5. What happens is when you extend the game, as you probably heard in the podcast with my dad, when you have time available, anything can happen.
Like Friday Night Lights. It makes me reminds me of the movie. What was it? Like that star running back. He goes back in for the play and it busts him up.
You don't want to extend time. You don't want to do it. And Golden State, you have the confidence. You're up 3-1. It should be fine. And then it happens. Something happens here. The fact you have to play one more game means Andrew Bogut maybe gets hurt in that one more game. All of a sudden, it's all over.
And then Steph Curry's wife goes off the rails in Game 6, and then Game 7 doesn't feel like Golden State even has home court. It's just like a neutral field.
In Game 7, and then you have Steph Curry with the final shot potential against Kevin Love guarding him. I mean, things are crazy.
That was
the
a
magic.
Great finals. I was very happy about that.
The magic of the highest levels, whether you're talking government, sports, life. It's a tick here or there.
You're right.
That's the difference. And so the uncertainty is killing me. So I'm sitting there going, all right, I did a podcast after Game 5, I think, with a few people, and we're talking like, yeah, this will be fine. This will. And magic happens. And that's what we love about life, sports, politics, but it's also what we hate about it because we all want to be experts. We all want to know that our bet worked. It's like I do these lines each week for football, and there's a reason Vegas wins all the time. Seattle's a 6.5 point favorite last week. They win by 6. And so you're just like, but I wanted to pick Seattle because I think they're that much better. And I don't want to pick Buffalo and then hope they just get in within 6. But like lines make that hard. Lines add confusion to your life. But you want to have certainty, but you also want to have magic. And that's the most difficult part of prognosticating anything. When it's your team, that's the only time you're home free because you can you jump on the magic carpet ride and you root for them regardless. It gives you the out. But when you're just neutral teams, you're watching and you're rooting for a certain outcome because you bet something, or not bet, but prognosticated on it. The uncertainty actually takes away from the magic in some way. Then you come all the way to Chicago. Chicago goes down 3-1, and I went, wow, that was quick. And then I'm saying this is the same script as the Mets last year. Chicago will lose at home in Game 5. Somehow magic truly happens to the point where karma was like, no, which side do we go with? We can't do it. We have to make them have like a Bible event at the end of 9 innings where it rains, but it's not long enough of a rain delay. And like a team can have a team meeting in between the 9th inning and extra innings, and magic is all over the place. And so I think this was the year of upending certainty in any way. And I think that's amazing. But it also stinks when you think you know it all.
Well, I mean, for one thing, that Game 7, the Cubs versus Cleveland, that was the most widely watched baseball game in like 25 years since the Twins versus the Blue Jays.
As good as it gets.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great game. I enjoyed it, and I was, I didn't have any real affiliation. I thought it would have been kind of neat if Cleveland was dual champions, but actually, I was pulling for the Cubs. I was happy. So like the uncertainty, it sucks you in.
It's weird though. In the moment, I found my soul rooting for Cleveland. Like I found myself becoming a fan of Cleveland. I'm like, why am I doing this? I don't get it. To the point where I was like, oh man, Cleveland's down 6-3. this is awful. And I'm like, why? I don't care.
Yeah,
you know, no, it's good for Chicago to win. And then when the guy, the light hitting outfielder, 36 years old, hits the 2-run homer to tie it, you're like, there is some crazy shit happening right now that I can't even understand. And then they go on to lose after that magic.
That was something. But it gives me hope. I said that. It gave me hope that, you know, it only took the Cubs 108 years. If it takes the Knicks 108 years to win another title, I'll be 100 when they win. So it gives me hope that they'll do it in my lifetime if I make it to 100.
That's very true.
Yeah. But when you talk to uncertainty too, and you're going to see about this, and we don't know this as well, because it's almost like, and your dad was saying in the podcast too, like as Americans, we're just concerned about America. But what happened with Trump is a larger trend for the world at large. Look at Brexit. And that's something I haven't studied very closely, but I remember I went to a debate party, the first debate, and there was this woman here working for the UN, and she was from Germany. She was like, what do you think's going to happen? It's before the first debate, when things still seem really close, when people are like, oh, right after Clinton got all, you know, tripped up at the 9/11, you know, commemoration. Yeah. And I'm like, you know, I really don't know. But, you know, if Clinton ends up losing, I think you're just going to see it's like, it's part of a larger trend. Like what you saw with Brexit. If she doesn't, then it's just a blip. And obviously now it's part of a larger trend right there. But you also make me think it's timing. Like literally, if the third debate ended and we voted 2 days later, I think Clinton would have been president.
Yeah, you don't want to extend time.
But then it was a lag, and Trump's you know, cameras were in his face, because they said this election was all about who is under the media scrutiny. Whoever's under the media scrutiny for this election is the one losing. And that's what happened. And the narrative went to Clinton last. And maybe that's really all it came down to. You know, there were so many things. They're going to be dissecting this election for a really, really long time. And then with all these other things happening and stuff, you know, and it just, it's, I mean, I guess it's a lot to study and read. And I mean, I think I would have preferred the stability, like you were saying. I'd want the alarm system to stay there. I would have liked that better. But it reminds me of one of your last podcast episodes, you talked about the malaise. Yeah. Well, it sounds like the malaise is kind of...
It's been undone.
Yeah, it's been undone.
We want it on... That's the hard part of being human. You want things undone when it feels stuck. But sometimes you're stuck in the way you agree with. Mm-hmm. And so... I think there just everything feels like an inflection point if you want to find it, you know, but 2016 was a weird year. There was a lot of weird stuff that happened. I mean, who would think Brexit would do it? My issue is a lot of the places that had a big lead on the rest of the country mistook that lead for a deficit of country's character, a deficit of something that's missing inside themselves. I don't know what it is, but America truly has a lead on so much of the world just by cause of our location. We're perfectly placed. We have oceans that keep us away from things. With a country the size of many federations of countries, with, as Robin Williams said, the loft on top of a really cool party in Canada, and then South America, which has its issues, partially, you know, can be caused by us, but also they're not that dangerous to us in general. And I think that we mistake our lead for not being in the game. And so we're almost dangerously throwing away our lead by doing certain things. Britain threw away their location as the centerpiece of the financial world. They were the beautiful centerpiece. They sit basically in the middle of the world between all different poles, you know, and they threw it away because the hinterlands don't care about being the centerpiece of the financial world where people can move money between it and it's not helping. But you take it away and all your assumptions, it doesn't make it better. It undoes and maybe brings a part of your society back to the lowest common denominator. And that's my fear. We can't let that happen. We do need to find a way to bring the parts that feel lost up, but we cannot bring down where we have leads. We can't bring down those parts of our society so that we can then say we're more equal. That's a dangerous place. And that's a lot of what's happened in 2016.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's you have me at a loss for words right now. How you summed it up. Yeah, that sounds like that. You kind of capped it off right there. So.
And we're actually sort of at the point where we have to go, because I have to go unfortunately to a wake in 2016.
Oh, really? So it's like yesterday you had a wake. You know,
no, today's the wake. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yesterday.
Yesterday you had your own personal funeral. I felt the funeral too. It was in my household as well. It felt like a funeral. Even my daughter seemed kind of affected by it and everything. And it was a rainy day, overcast. It's like, but like, you know, today was a nice day.
We keep moving, and sometimes you do need sometimes the best thing that can happen is to be challenged to find your best self.
I still don't think that I don't know. Some people told me that, that from this will come out better from Trump being elected. I'm not so sure about that. I kind of believe in slow and steady wins the race. The stability, I think stability is good there, but it is a jolt to the system. And really now is the time to get active, because there's a lot of great things that Obama did that can get undone. That's really terrifying. Right there. So what I would just say to people is don't wait 4 years. Get involved now. Really try and make the change now. Look at it in 2-year increments. Okay, what's going to happen in these next 2 years? Right. There could be a lot of damage done, but let's try and mitigate it. Let's see if there's we could really do something to make a difference. Because the most passive form of civic participation is by voting. It's the most passive form. Yeah. Like our systems are in place to be designed where people play roles in it.
It's cheap calories.
Yeah, it is.
It's gonna fill you for a second. It's gonna taste good, and then you're gonna feel good about yourself, and then you're gonna hate yourself.
After voting, is that what happened?
Afterwards, it's just sugar. It's a quick, it's a whippet or something. It's a quick high.
I haven't heard of whippets in a long time. But,
how do you feel about this? How'd you do?
No, this was great. Right? I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
It's not so bad. Yeah, it's just talking.
You're
it's
right.
Nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, totally.
You're just talking. It's an hour goes by.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, we'll pick it up again.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.